Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel. Today I am going to be working on this. So this is a Cubipedia Belemnite, and I'm going to go pretty aggressive with it. There's not a lot of sand, but there's also not a hell of a lot of colour. There's a little bit of a twinkle here and there. Same with the tip here, there's a little bit, but you can see it's not the absolute perfect shape. We're missing that last little segment at the top. And I don't like manipulating the piece too much and creating a point here and pretending that we had a full one. It is what it is, we've got to work with what we've got. And I'm just going to go through and show you how to take off a lot of this little crust without changing too much. Because like any fossil, you don't want to cut it to the point where it's not a fossil. Now I've heard absolute horror stories from a long time ago where people could get pieces like this and believe it or not, they would actually segment it up and just slice it up and make a whole heap of nice little opal rounds. Now that is disastrous. Some of them would keep the tapering end because then you got uneven rounds, and they would basically drill a little hole in the top of it and glue a pin in, and you could wear it as a bit of a pendant, kind of like shark tooth style with it dangling. I've heard many old timers talk about how they've sliced up many of these kind of pieces, and it makes me incredibly sad. One day I would like to be known as having the largest collection of opal belemnites. So no matter if it's just straight potch or a tiny little twinkle or a full-on crystal piece, I am keeping a bunch of these for myself. It's really the one thing that I will never really get rid of. If I ever come in possession of one of these, I am adding it to the collection, and hopefully we can get up to the thousands. But just in case one slips through my fingers and you get a hold of it, I'll show you what to do in terms of cleaning it up without changing it too much. Sure, sometimes the piece will just be 50% sand and then go for it, just cut it up. Doesn't really matter too much, though I still like the shape even if it's sandy. But in general, you try to keep them fairly intact and fairly distinctive in terms of their shape. And to do that, we're just going to hit it with a little bit of sintered diamond to take off the crust and then go through all the standard polishing steps. I might use the budget sandpaper barrel method for this one just to try it out. Unfortunately, Nova points have soared in price. Diamond Pacific have done something funny and jacked up the prices. So I've actually got some plans to counteract that a little bit, but right now it's almost impossible for me to get more without paying a ungodly price. So I might as well show that the sandpaper barrels can get the job done. They're actually pretty much perfect for a piece like this. So let's whip them out and get going. And away we go. Here it is, pretty dry. Have a quick look. Just remember what it looks like. We give it a quick dunk in water, and we're going to go pretty gentle here. We're going with the 600 grit sintered diamond. We get surprised a bit during this one, but you'll see that in a second. And we're just going to sweep across it. Now the most important thing on this is if you don't want to start creating any divots or anything, you want to keep the burr moving like I am here. It doesn't have to be super fast. We're not trying to get like a really flat surface. That's when you want to go real fast. But you do just don't go static at any point in time, or you will start just burning your way in. The 600 grit's gentle, but it's not that gentle. You can see it is ripping that sand off like you would not believe. It'll come off really quickly, and we're going to take this down only to get rid of some of that rusty color. As soon as you see deep sand pockets and stuff, we're just going to leave those. Those are going to stay in because we're going to change the shape too much. You'll see a pocket like here, that sand just disappears really fast. But what's left underneath, that's pretty much what we want to aim for all the way around. So we'll flash forwards because it's not that entertaining, we're not changing the shape, and bam! I actually struck gold, or at least a little bit of colour. And it's not bad, it's just a little pocket of crystal opal. If you look at it from side on, you'll see that it's actually very transparent, so it's not actually a white opal, it's just a little pocket of crystal opal sitting there on the white opal, and it's got colour, so a huge win. Then we're switching over to the sandpaper burrs, starting at 240, going all the way up to 5,000. Now this, of course, because all grit standards are all over the place, this is a 5,000 grit, but it's not the ANSI grit, it's a FEPA-P grit, which essentially means the abrasive particle on it is around about the 5 micron when we get to the highest point, which is pretty small. I think it's when that grit standard actually maxes out. It might actually get to about 7,000 now that I'm thinking about it, but I've only got the drums up to 5,000, and at 5 micron you'll see after this that it gets a pretty good finish on the stone. I'm always pleasantly surprised by it. This one, of course, the stone is pretty natural, so it's very undulating, a lot of uneven places, so it's not doing it justice, but these things can get an incredible smooth finish. And I'm definitely cutting corners here because of the quality of the opal. But you can see this is a massive chunk of opal. This is like 45 carats, maybe a little bit more than that when it was fully rough. Possibly around 50 carats. It finishes up about 43 or 45. But I'm going over this, and the basic gist is for this video, I'm just testing how well a single sheet, so just one single rotation around the burr, will do on the opal. And it does do pretty well, but for a stone of this size, you're gonna need to peel a layer and probably do all of these twice. It's it's just a lot of surface area. A lot of your standard little cabs and stuff, it's not a huge amount of surface area. You'll get away with not needing to peel back your sandpapers and do it again. You should be able to do it all in the one. In fact, you can probably get a couple stones done before peeling. These are like an onion, and they've only got a certain number of layers, and you don't want to burn through them too quickly. But they do a lot of good job. Just like the Nova Points though, these are the Nova Point replacements, but just like the Nova Points, you want to rely on the sintered diamonds. The sintered diamonds, you could do 1,000 of these stones and they're not going to wear out. Whereas these have got a very limited number of uses. They will wear out much quicker. A little bit quicker than the Nova Points, but of course they're incredibly cheap in comparison. So you just want to be a little bit careful. Don't ask them to do too much, but they do incredibly great work. You can see here. So that's dry, post sandpaper, and have a look at it. It's done pretty well. You can see that gloss is starting to come over the top, so it does get to a nice pre-polished stage. And then we're just switching over to the cerium oxide, super cerium oxide, and just rub it on in. Pre-soak the stone so those sand pockets don't catch any of that cerium oxide powder, and just don't let it get dry. That's when you start baking things in. That's what a lot of people that I talk to and have video calls with and stuff, they're always showing me what's happened to some of their stones, and it's typically boulder opal where it's got little pits, and they've packed it in with aluminium oxide, and it's not ideal. Just a very easy thing to avoid as well. Just the right use of water, the right use of powder, and the right use of the burr. Just take it nice and easy. There's no rush. Once you're up to this stage, you don't need to worry about over grinding this piece. Just keep it wet, otherwise if it dries out, you might end up cracking it. The heat can build up really fast with these dense felt burrs. A good quality burr will actually cause a fair bit of friction if it's not kept wet, but it does give a really good contact between the surface and the opal, and it will get that polish real shiny for you. But we'll flash forward and you can have a look at the finished stone. Well, this had a lot more colour in it than I thought it was going to. I thought it was going to be a pretty much a podgy Belemnite. I love them no matter what. But this one, I mean, it's even got a little twinkle of red in there. Bit of purple as well. It's yeah, mostly green, but you know what? I wasn't expecting to see any crystal portion in this one. I saw a little sparkle right on the tip when it was rough, but yeah, you peel it back a little bit, and it makes me wonder whether I'm gonna bother getting rid of this little sand hole. So that sand from that little spot there comes all the way up and then breaks the surface here. The one further up here is not linked, that just goes in pretty deep. This one here, there's no way I'm going to get rid of. That one casts a really deep shadow when you get the torch in from the side. Same with the one on the back. And this is really common. You get these little sections where it's like a little spear of sand, like a wedge that goes straight in. Pretty annoying, but I have kept, as you can see, a lot of the imperfections, because I think like even these little channel things that come up on the side, like this one here, it's part of how the fossil formed, and I don't really want to destroy that. The only major thing that I changed on this piece was this one here. I just wanted to get that sand out. I could see that it was just this little corner that had the sand, so I've just cut it, and you can see here, it's a little bit of a V, a little bit of a nick into that one. A lot of these other ones I could get rid of a bit, like this is the back and it doesn't have a lot of colour. I have played with the idea of just slightly flattening the back and then being able to set it. There's a piece of jewellery in town actually that's got one of these set, and it just like kind of hooks around, but the back of it is just slightly flattened, which I thought is a pretty cool idea. A pretty good finger replacement, so I'll add this one to the others and keep it in storage. Keep the collection growing. It is the one thing I really want to keep collecting a lot of. I like all the fossils, but these are, I don't know, I've always liked these since the very beginning. And the major part of this entire process was relying on these. And you can see here, like this one, I'm basically just using them until I'm confident there's no grit left. These just feel like paper. They're not sandpaper anymore, they are just paper. And because I was just relying on these, I went through all of them until they were at that stage, so everything just paper. You can see here I tore off a fresh surface, and that fresh surface is pretty wrecked. And it's a little bit cheeky for me to think that just one reveal would be enough for an opal of this size. And you can see there are a lot of areas that if this was a gem grade Belemnite, I would not have just gone with one pass. It would definitely be two. Maybe not so important on the higher ones, but on the lower grits especially, I would have spent a lot more time doing a couple layers worth of the, maybe not so much the 400, but the 600 I definitely would have. The 800 and the 1000, I definitely would have spent at least two lots on each of these. The rest of the hard work is mostly done by the sintered diamond. These are just that Nova point replacement because I'm finding them incredibly hard to get, and it's going to be a problem for me in the future. But I've got a bit of a secret project going on that side of things, so we might not need Nova points anymore if I manage to put something else together that's pretty competitive. Though I don't know if I'll be able to mass manufacture, so I'm still going to try to find a source of Nova points for a reasonable price, but if Diamond Pacific themselves are jacking them up, there's not much I can do other than, yeah, just cop the cost of it until there's a better alternative out there. And these sandpaper drums are as close as I can get at the moment. Either way, it gets a pretty nice finish. You just chuck the cerium oxide on afterwards and it gets a nice polish. I could definitely spend a lot more time and go for a more even cut now that I've seen some color. Normally I like to keep them a real organic raw form. And these things, when they form as a fossil, they're not perfectly smooth. You do get these undulations and stuff. You can see it particularly along this back edge. There were parts that were a little bit low and parts that weren't, and then of course you've got these little sand divots every now and then. That's what I really like about these. It's that organic shape. No two Belemnites are the exact same shape, exact same color, exact same inclusions. It's all very cool because they were once a living creature. And now they look even cooler because sometimes they have a little bit of color. Certainly not my best one, but definitely one worth keeping. So straight to the storage, I have some parcels that have arrived that have already been on the channel, and one of those included some interesting pieces from Pulitzer Opal, which I'm going to work on. But even more importantly, it's the weekend and I've got to get to jewelry making. I've got to learn it, I've got to dive in, and so I'll peace out now and get that box out and really start sorting through it and just do some practice runs, I think. Might set some boulder opal that I've had sitting around for half a dozen years. I feel like that's the least likely to break on me. Boulder opal treats me well, so I'm going to hopefully treat it well and get some pendants set. Hopefully you'll see that in the very near future. But until then, good luck with your carving, and I'll see you in the next one.